Welcome back guys, Mel here from Mel's Motors. Right, another Saturday and I'm here doing the one thing I hate doing is working on my own bike. I do this for a living, so when you come to do your own bike it's quite painful. I did a video a little while ago on this where the exhaust was blowing. I had to strip it and do some bits to it. I'll put a link at the bottom for that video. It's also blowing again somewhere else. I think the small cat at the front there has got a blow in it, so we're going to have a look at that as well. Anyway, this bike is in for a full service. It's August 5th 2023 and it's absolutely peeing it outside. British summer. I do a Wales trip every year. There's a group of us that go. We've got a Wales trip coming up next weekend and I did that on the Aprilia RS660 last time. And we did 800 miles for that weekend and 700 was in the rain. It was painful. I had a good time like everyone else, but this is probably more suited to Welsh weather than the Aprilia RS660. So this one has been neglected a little bit because it's being used all the time as a courtesy bike and I don't ride it as much as I used to. So it's overdue a full service, valve clearance check, sort the exhaust out, and just a general check over really. On YouTube there's no real videos for this. There are the odd videos for an oil change and coolant change. So this will be full service, valve clearances, exhaust again and a check over. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's enough of me rambling about my Welsh trips and my bikes, but I hope you enjoyed this video. So here's the bike. Chain loose and super dry, so we've got a slight oil leak here somewhere, so there might be a seal in here. This is the exhaust that's blowing. We've got this heat shield on there, so I managed to stick a Jubilee clip on there just to keep the gases in there and keep it a bit quieter. So we'll get that back off and see what's causing that issue. There's one of the cylinder heads here just under the tank, so we'll do valve clearances on that. It's a V twin, so we've got the other cylinder head at the front here. I don't remember ever changing the coolant in there, so we'll do a fresh coolant change on that. I can't remember the last time I did brake fluid change and clutch fluid change, so we'll get those done as well. If I get time I'll do fork oil, back brake fluid is there, and well, we'll just have a general check over and make sure everything's okay. Now for the oil change, I'm going to run some engine flush through this, but it's probably going to be the last thing I do because I don't want to warm the engine up before I do valve clearances, so that's going to be my main job. Me personally, I always start with the hardest job first and then slowly move towards the easier jobs. At least it gets that out the way, and then you've got your time constraints are all managed later on. This is the ABS version, which has this big V-shape, cone-shaped thing because the ABS pumps there. You can tell the difference between these. The non-ABS version don't have this on there, so it looks very bare and open. You can buy a cone for the non-ABS version, which is an aftermarket thing, which makes it look similar to that. The ones without the ABS look very naked, so I'm glad I've got this version. So tank's off. You can see there the back cylinder head now. The fuel pump plug is going through that tiny hole there. I had to use a screwdriver to force it out. Air filters in there. I replaced that a few years ago. It's a reusable one. It's a BMC air filter. So we'll get that out, clean that up. I don't don't think we'll have to take this airbox out completely, because I should be able to get to the cylinder head from the front. So I'll drain the coolant out, so I'm going to replace that anyway, and that'll give me access to the front cylinder head. Right, for now, I'm going to take the coil pack out, spark plug out, and the front spark plug. The reason I take those out is it makes it easier for turning the engine over when doing valve clearances. And then we'll get the cam cover off, and then we'll do our valve clearance check. So I'm going to drain the coolant now so we can remove the radiator, so we can gain access to the front cylinder head. I have a plastic tub here. If you ever have these 25 litre plastic tubs, cut them in half and they become perfect little trays for oil changes, antifreeze. Just a tip. So under this hose, the radiator is obviously going to squirt that way, so I need to try and catch it the best I can. Okay, now that the radiator's off, you can see you've got clear access to the front cylinder head, and we have reasonable access to the rear cylinder head. So I'm going to take this coil pack off along with the back one, pull the plugs out, and then we get the cam covers off. Okay, so I'm going to check the valve clearances. So I've got the information on my computer over there. So all I need is a minimum and a maximum, and I need the lobes to be up, and then I can check underneath them to see if they're between these two tolerances. I don't need to measure anything in between these two, just a minimum and a maximum, that's it. Now to turn the engine over, I could take the cap off the centre of this generator and stick a socket on there, but I find it just as easy to stick it in 6th gear and then just spin the wheel. So the exhaust has come up first, the lobes at the top, so we can check the valve clearances for the exhaust. This is set for inlet, so I'm trying to get the measurements for the exhaust. So this is the minimum, so it's gone in that one, not that one, so we've got a tight valve. So now I'm going to work my way down the feeler gauges to see what the gap is, so I can make a note of that, and then I can adjust the shim thickness to compensate for that gap. Okay, so I found the gauge that goes in. Right, Right, now we're going to check the inlets. So this is the minimum, and the minimum won't go in. So we're going to go down next one. Still won't go in. Still tight. Wow, that was the smallest one I had, so it's even smaller than that. So I knew there was a problem with this bike because we had trouble starting it, and once it fires up it's fine, but from cold you'd crank it over and you could sense that something wasn't right. So that would explain it. Tight valves, we're getting low compression on crank over, but as the bike fires up and springs into life, it carries on going. So 0.05 of a mil won't go in. Okay, we've got 3 out of this 1 cylinder head to resolve, which is just 1 exhaust and 2 inlets, and this one has no gap at all. So I'm not going to start on the front one, I'm just going to work on this one, finish this one, and then go to the front one. Now we need to sort out the timing. The timing on this is different to some other conventional engines, because you've got the timing chain that runs a pulley in the centre, which runs a gear, and then the gears run these 2 cams. So I'm going to time it up, take the cam cover off, and then I'll adjust these up. Right guys, so I'm going to show you how I time up one of these and the process which I go through to take these off. This isn't the process that's in the book. The book is different, but every mechanic has their way of doing stuff. If the book doesn't work or it's complicated, we'll always figure out a better way to do it. So you can see I've got a T-bar here. I've eventually taken this cap off so we can turn the engine through this centre belt. It's still in gear, so I can still move it with the back wheel, but it's not accurate as I want it to be, because if you jerk it's untidy. So we're going to use a T-bar. You can use a ratchet, because you want to go backwards and forwards with this. A ratchet, you've got to flick it forwards and backwards, and it becomes really tedious. So a T-bar is the best way to go. So over here I've put a DTI gauge into the cylinder so we can see where top dead center is. Those of you who don't know what top dead center is, it's the highest point of the piston. So I'm just going to turn this T-bar backwards and forwards, and this is, you don't need this to do this procedure, but this is a visual aid for you guys because you can't see the piston inside the cylinder. So this will give us a visual aid of where the piston's at. So if I turn, so we're looking for a point where this gauge stops. So we're going to keep going. So it's stopped there, and now it's about to come back. So the piston's reached its top dead center, and now it's going back down. So we want to get it back to a point where this gauge comes to final rest, which is about there. So I've marked it with this so you can see where it is. So this dial moves, so you can use it as a reference. So go backwards and forwards. So we're back. Okay, so we know we're at top dead center. Now, I've done these before. A friend of mine's got a Shiver 900. Did that last year. We had to do valve clearance on that, so I've been through this procedure before. Where the camshaft goes through this cap, there is actually a hole in the camshaft. Now, as always here, we make stuff. So 6mm bolt in the lathe, machined it down to the size of that hole in the camshaft. So now that's become my locking tool. I've got 2 of those, one for the other side. Now, if you have a look at this cam gear, you can see that there's two parts to it, a smaller back part and a bigger front part. Now if we come to the front here, if you have a look on this one, you can see there's some springs in there, same on the other one. Now what do these springs do? Now these gears are an anti-chatter gears. Because the camshaft is pushing down on springs, so as it's trying to push down, it loads up, and then as it comes back, it frees off very quickly, especially at high revs. These gears will start to chatter. It will sound like a Ducati, it will sound terrible. Now, cars and bikes have anti-chatter on their cams if they're gear driven, and it literally is to keep it quiet. Now if I use this screwdriver and twist, you can see the two gears are independent of each other, but because they're meshed into that gear, they stay tight together. Now if I was to take this off, this back gear, because it's spring loaded, it will spring to about halfway between one of these gears, and when you try and put it back down, it won't mesh up. So to hold those in place, you just need a 6mm bolt. You put them into this locking hole, and that just stops the gears from bouncing back. They will bounce back slightly, but not enough to cause an issue. A lot better than being half a gear out. So we know they're in place. I've got this other bolt as well, so we'll put that back in. And once it's timed up, we can undo these cam caps. Now the great thing with this is you don't have to take the chain tensioner off or take the chain off, because the gears sit on top of the main drive gear at the bottom there, which is chain driven. So that one gear drives two cams. Hope that made sense. So I'm going to tighten these up to make sure they're tight. Now the other thing you need is some cable ties. Now what are the cable ties for? Well, when you undo these cam caps, and these are only pins going into the cams, so we're going to loop these cable ties around to hold the camshaft into the cam carrier, and then once we take the cam carrier off, the cams come with it and they stay timed as well. So my long-winded jargon's done. Let's get these cable ties on. Now what I normally do is bend the ends up, and it gives you a better chance of getting these through. Okay, the cams are off. Now when I pull these buckets off, underneath those buckets there'll be a small shim. The last time I did one of these, when I lifted the buckets off, the little shim fell down. It took us half a day to find it, because if it falls in the engine it will destroy it. So this time I'm going to lift it off and be super gentle, super careful, make sure I don't lose any of the shims. I'm just going to use a magnet to pull the buckets out. Okay, so there's the shim inside. Okay, so between these boxes, so these go up in half sizes, these go up in quarter sizes. In between the two boxes, I've got the shims that I think I need for this. Now, to make the gaps bigger, the shims need to go smaller so that we can have a bigger clearance between the bottom of the camshaft and the top of this bucket. Now, these old shims, they're still good. So this is a 2.9, so this will go back in 2.9, and then they can be reused. Yeah, never throw them away because they're still good. There's no wear in them. Well, the number on the back was exactly the thickness they were, so they're still good to go. Right, so I'm going to put these shims back in, buckets back on, camshaft back in, make sure it's timed up, do the whole cycle again, measure again, and see where we're at. Alright, whilst I'm working, it's horrendous noise above my head. This is August weather. Absolutely peeing it down. Okay, one head done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back, put the DTI gauge back in there, so I'm 100% sure that what I've done is correct. So I'm going to get it somewhere close, where the two cam lobes are facing away from each other. So they're somewhere close. Okay, that's exactly where it's supposed to be. That's lined up. That's lined up. Gears are all good. So this side is done. Okay, back cover's back on. Got the half moons here. Put some silicone on those and in the centre here so it doesn't fill the spark plug hole with oil. Cleaned, all good. The coil and the plug will go in later because obviously I still need to turn the engine over to do the front. So we'll take it up in the air and work on the front. Okay, the front head's done as well. The 2 exhaust ones were out and 1 inlet, so it was the same procedure as the back one, so they're done. This front cylinder, or the cam cover, gets most of the abuse from the road. It was corroded, I wire brushed it, got the dirt off it, paint flaked off, so I've repainted that with very high temperature black paint, and these screws were corroded as well, so just wire wheel those and got those back to nice again. Right, so now I'm going to throw the plugs in, put the coil packs back in, get the radiator back in, fill that back up with coolant. So before I put this in, I'm going to put some waterproof silicone grease around this, so it doesn't take any moisture in. Okay, now we're going to have a look at the air filter, so let's stake that in. This air filter is actually really clean. It's been in there for quite a few years, but it's really dirty inside the box. I mean, none of this dirt will go in the engine because it's on the underside of where the air comes through, so the air would go that way. So the top's always clean. Just have a look at these butterflies and see how dirty they are. So these throttle bodies are fly-by-wire. This bike was actually the first production motorcycle to have fly-by-wire throttle. So as you pull the throttle, so nothing's opening. It goes to this little potentiometer. You can't see anything happening, but the cables go to the back of that. It's like a volume control, so it says how much throttle you want, and then the motor will open up. Well, it's got individual motors. Each individual motor will open up the throttle as much as it needs to be opened. This has got rain mode, touring and sport, so it just changes the responsiveness of the throttle. Rain does drop the power dramatically. So I'm going to just clean up in here and then blow the air filter out and just put it back together. Right, we're doing quite well with this. Valve clearance is done, front and back cylinder head. So we've got 8 valves, 6 of those needed adjusting. They're done. This oil leak I spoke about, had a good look at it. It looked like it was coming from cam cover gaskets because the oil leaks right from there to the bottom. So they've been resealed, so hopefully that's cleared that issue up. Radiator's back in, coolant's back in, new plugs are in. Tanks aren't plumbed in. I've left the tank on there loose for the minute. It is ready to start, but I don't want to start it because I'm going to draw my attention to this exhaust issue. I'm not going to do a video on taking the exhaust off because I've already done a video of that. So I'll just get on with my job, get the exhaust off, and then we'll have a look at see what's the issue with that. Clutch bled, front brake bled, rear brake bled. So brakes are all done. Quite a lot of black dirt came out of this one. Front wasn't too bad. I'm sure I've bled the front before. Coolant is topped up, but I need to run it to let the thermostat open, fan kick in. Once that's done, I'll double check the level. As of right now, exhaust. Well, I've got the exhaust off, and something doesn't look right already. Looks like it might be broken inside, right at the bottom. Right, so take the heat shield off and see what the problem is. So I need to get this bolt out. I've got my heat inductor, just in case it's corroded. I had a closer look. It looks like this bolt has been put in and spot welded. So, got my disc cutter. Just going to grind away at that spot weld and see if the bolt comes out. Okay, I've refitted the exhaust back. The brake is still there, it hasn't gone away. It's just the brake wasn't clean enough. As you can see, there's some gaps here. So I couldn't stick it back together like a jigsaw. So I've had to reinstall it. I've clamped that up. It's bolted on here properly. So it's back in its normal position. So now I'm just going to tack it in a few places, and then we're going to take the exhaust system off and then seam weld it all the way around when it's on the floor. Okay, the exhaust's all done and back on. I've welded it at the bottom where it was broken. I've put the heat shield back on. I've taken my temporary Jubilee clip off, just tacked on there the heat shield. It's back in, tight at the front cowling's on. I haven't started it yet. I still don't want to start it. It's time for an oil change now, so I've got some flush. So I'm going to put that in the oil, then I'm going to fire it up, then we can check the exhaust, get the coolant temperature up to temperature, make sure the fan cuts in, we'll let it cool down, we'll drain the oil and flush out, do the oil filter, and once it cools down to a moderate temperature we can take the cap off and double check the level. Right, next thing is flush. So we've had the fuel line off, but that's back in. I'm just going to let it prime a couple of times and see if it starts. exhaust. The other heat shield on the other side is rattling from cold. So I'm going to spot weld that in place. No blow, no blow, no blow, and no blow. Fan, blow a lot. So I've just jacked the engine up down there, just dropped the wheel down, taking the suspension bolt out here just to gain access to this heat shield. I tried to undo the bolt, stick a washer under there, but it was corroded, so it broke out. So I'm going to have to weld that and put a tack on the bottom bolt as well. Stop that exhaust heat shield from rattling. That's what the noise was when I started it up, but as soon as that's done, that should be cured. Okay, so the spot welds are done, so that shield is nice and stiff now, so I'm just going to put the suspension back on. Okay, remember that engine flush that I put in? Well, this is the bottle. I've cut the back open. Just going to use it as a funnel. It's got a thread on there, so it just screws in. Well guys, service is done. Aprilia Shiver, valve clearances, a few other bits and pieces. I didn't do the fork oil. I'm going to do it next time, I just didn't have time. I've been doing this in between jobs throughout the week. It's Thursday, so it's Wales trip eve, and the weather has changed. In the roaring rain we had, we've got to blue skies. Now I don't know how long it's going to last, but the reason I was doing this Aprilia Shiver was in case the weather turned horrendous like it was last week. I also serviced the RS660. So looking at the cloudless skies, guess which one's going to Wales? It's going to be this one. Well guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you missed the video for the exhaust repair I did on that Aprilia, there'll be a link at the bottom, and there'll also be a little link in one of these boxes. Click on those, enjoy the video. As always, hit the like button, the bell notification, subscribe, don't forget it's free, and you'll get to see more of these videos. Take care guys.